Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Curious About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Brian Rothenberg, and today I wanted to share something that I've been thinking about for the last couple of weeks since I attended Strategy World. Basically, that is, what numbers would Strategy or MSTR, that's the stock ticker, have to put up for quarterly earnings to basically have the highest quarterly earnings ever reported by a public company. And so yesterday I decided that I wanted to do the analysis. So I'm going to share my screen and walk through some of those pieces. So this is a post that I put up on X yesterday on May 31st, 2025. Today is Sunday, June 1st, 2025. So basically illustrating what I was thinking there. And what's really cool about Strategy is that they post all of their metrics online easily for everyone to see. And a number of other companies like Semler and like Metaplanet are doing the same. I expect most Bitcoin treasury companies to follow this pattern going forward. But that means I can see all of the Bitcoin acquisitions, the prices, acquisition and holding costs across time, and be able to model that out, which I'll come back to in just a minute. The other thing that we have, because we have Wikipedia, is the list of global quarterly earnings all time. Those with more than $10 billion in earnings. There are 35, I think, 34 on this list. And the other interesting thing for me is the last time somebody was added there was Q2 of 2020, and that was Berkshire Hathaway. So it's been a really, really long time since anybody's been added to this list. So I'm going to walk through my analysis. The first model that I created was based on basically steady state in terms of the number of Bitcoin purchases. I did not model whether, what would happen, what this would look like if the Bitcoin cost goes down from here. That's okay if it does. It still may mean that they get what they need to, which is posting quarterly earnings that basically erase all of the past quarterly losses that they've had for the last 3 quarters. And I think the price that they need to hit for that is somewhere around $97,000 per Bitcoin based on their previous holdings. Here, I'm just looking at what's sort of a base case or a bear case, probably in that case, what's a base case, and what are some bull cases for us here. And this is assuming no more Bitcoin purchases in Q2. So it's only the 580,250 Bitcoin that they already have. And this is the carried value, basically the average weighted cost there and how much on average they were spending to acquire that Bitcoin so far this quarter. And as you can see at today's price, or it was really yesterday's price, but today we're around 105,000, so not too far off. They would post a quarterly profit of 2.28 billion, which if we go back to this, that was 12.28 billion. If we go back to this list, that would put them, I believe, 18th or 17th. I guess it would be 18th here on the list above Apple from Q2 2012. So that's pretty realistic in my estimation that they will at least that, and I'd be pretty surprised at that point without a major change in the price of Bitcoin or something else happening to Strategy that they don't somehow make this list, right? They only would need $10 billion of quarterly profits to make this list. And if they didn't even buy any more Bitcoin, that wouldn't happen. I don't have it up, but Saylor typically, and this is Michael Saylor on X, typically posts on Sundays that a new Bitcoin buy is going to be reported on Monday and usually reports that before 9 a.m. on Monday. So I expect that there will be another report of purchased Bitcoin tomorrow morning. The second sort of modeling, I guess, within this model one I did was, what would the value be if we go back to the all-time high that was achieved in the last 2 weeks or so of 112,509? That would be $16.7 billion quarterly profit. And, that would put them in 9th place based on the Wikipedia data that I was showing before. If we go to the value, if again, they don't buy any more Bitcoin, but it goes up to $122,000 per Bitcoin, that's going to put them in 3rd place, give them the bronze medal at 22.2 billion. If it goes up to 146,000 $100,000 per Bitcoin. That puts them in second place with 36.1 billion. And finally, Bitcoin would need to drive up to $185,000 per Bitcoin to get them past the, I think it's 56 billion here for Freddie Mac. It's 58.7. I was wrong. But this would be 58.8 and push them all the way up into the first position there. So again, this is based on no more Bitcoin being purchased. In Model 2, I said, okay, let's make some assumptions here about Bitcoin purchases for the next 5 weeks or 4 weeks purchases and fifth week tomorrow reporting. And let's assume that the price starts tomorrow at yesterday's price because that's when I did this model and goes up 5% weekly from there. And so what we see is that the Bitcoin price would go up to $127,000 per Bitcoin. That strategy would accumulate 617,435 Bitcoin. Again, that's just the average of these prior weeks here. If I go down here and show you the average, and I rounded down by 1 Bitcoin per. So that would be, again, a bronze medal finish for them in terms of quarterly profits on that sheet there. And this becomes hard to ignore. I don't know that I think that this is a realistic model, but I'm going to keep going with it and go even more unrealistic from there. So here what I did is I took the last 2 quarters, so Q1 and Q2, took the average of all the Bitcoin purchases there. Again, it's not the average of all the Bitcoin they have, but just the purchases in Q1 and Q2, and extrapolated that forward with 8,365 Bitcoin per week reported there, and a 10% price increase, which gets us up to 153,419 Bitcoin. Is this possible? It's entirely possible. Would I, say that this is likely? I would say that it's probably not likely. But if it did happen, this would be a second place finish for strategy at $153,419 per Bitcoin with 622,000 Bitcoin on the balance sheet then. Model 4 is the most aggressive model. It is the least likely model, but again, stranger things have happened in the world, especially in the world of Bitcoin. This would be purchases at the average of Q4, Q1, and Q2. Now in Q4, they purchased a ton of Bitcoin in short order. And then it would also assume a price increase of 15% per week from here. Bitcoin could shoot up that much, but it probably won't go to 183,273. If it did, that would be a $60 billion quarterly profit based on the Bitcoin holdings. And so, that would be a first place finish for the highest quarterly profit ever for any company. And again, it just becomes more and more difficult to make the, investors and funds wait for access to strategy if you're the S&P 500 committee there. So what I did in Model 5 was I made my own assumptions, which was, the quarterly purchases have been around 74.38. What happens if we do a little bit less than that? What happens if the price of Bitcoin goes up 2% from where it was yesterday? It ends at 113,425. First thing that does is it gets Bitcoin over 600,000 Bitcoin on Strategy's balance sheet, which I think is something that they would like to do before the end of the quarter. So I don't think that this is overly bullish. I think that this is a good base case. And it gets Bitcoin back to where we've already shown it can go in terms of all-time highs. This would be a new all-time high, but I think that is immensely achievable. And that gives them a 9th place finish for quarterly profits ever. And again, no company has posted quarterly profits above $10 billion since 2023. And I'm going to go back and I'll put it in the comments. I just want to double check in terms of the quarterly profits there that NVIDIA hasn't done anything. Maybe this is just a really old list, but we'll go back. So this was my model. This is where I think we have a good shot of being. I don't think that these assumptions are too much. And then yesterday evening, after I did this modeling, I saw a post from Dan Hillary on X. Dan is a member of MSTR True North and has a lot of great analysis and likes to dig into the numbers. So I looked at what he said for the Bitcoin holdings and the Bitcoin price. He has slightly more Bitcoin holdings, about 250, 245 more than me. Bitcoin, and then a price of 115,000 and change rather than the 113 that I had. So I went ahead and plugged that into Model 6 here. Again, you still get about $18.4 billion in terms of the valuation, the quarterly profit for strategy at that point in time. 9th highest quarterly profit there. So it kind of tells me that my assumptions are probably not terribly far off if someone else is kind of thinking that. And I will say that, Dan is going much further down the rabbit hole modeling, when strategy is going to get to 1 million Bitcoin and everything like that, which is in 2026. And I think that that's immensely achievable. If you haven't read this post or looked at his analysis, I highly recommend going back and finding that on X, Hillary_Dan there, as you can see on the screen. The last thing that I wanted to quickly mention here is that these quarterly earnings are going to be unexpected. When you look at the analysts' estimates for strategy, quarterly earnings going forward are estimated to be, a minus 11 cents and a minus 11 cents in Q2 and Q3. This is probably based on the fundamental metrics about quarterly profits and things like that, probably much more on strategies underlying business around business intelligence software, which I think is, $100 million a year in revenue and maybe, $1 billion of the market cap of the company. I'll have to check those numbers offhand, but that's what I recall. But much smaller things rather than the Bitcoin on the balance sheet, which is a very new metric for, a public company to have and to be evaluated on, especially when you're marking it to the current value at the end of the quarter there. But what's interesting is while they think these are quarterly losses, you don't have very many analysts saying that these are sell, recommendations. So the vast majority of people following strategy are saying it's a buy, overweighted, and that's really cool as we kind of, look at those things. So it's not that people don't understand that this is coming, but they don't necessarily fully understand what's to come in terms of the profit that's being put on there. And so that's why this is a really cool trade. It's definitely something that I encourage everyone to look into. Is this 100% no? But if you look at the price targets that the analysts have for strategy, it's much, much higher than it is today. And strategy has already traded above $500 a share. Excuse me. I think I've got to get this back to probably 6 months ago or something like that. But, it was over $500 a share at one point previously, I believe. You can see closes here, 473. It's probably going higher. Bitcoin is probably going higher. Definitely something that I would put on my radar. I am invested in this stock. This is not financial advice, so I'm not telling you to go and do that. But just watch, right, in terms of what we're doing with the stock, what they continue to do there. And I think that there is going to be a lot of surprise with this stock going forward. And I know Punter Jeff has said this and many other people have repeated it on X, but what strategy does here in the next month and as they report earnings probably in August, it's going to melt faces off. If they get S&P 500 inclusion, if they post, a top quarterly profit, on this list, it's going to be immense. And so my guess is that I will post another video updating maybe my estimates here with the models as we go week to week, but certainly at the end of the month, after we know how much Bitcoin strategy has purchased and what the price is, I'll probably do that on July 1st or 2nd. And we'll see. We'll know what that quarterly profit is going to be in all likelihood, or if they have another quarterly loss, if Bitcoin goes down. But it would need to go down, I believe, below, I think it was 92,000, give or take, at the end of the quarter, last quarter. Sorry, it was at 82,000. So it would have to go down below 82,000 for them not to post a quarterly profit. It would have to be less than 97,000 per Bitcoin for them not to post a quarterly profit that makes up for the last 3 quarters losses and gives them the criteria to get S&P 500 inclusion. With that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will end the video there. Thank you all for joining me, and I hope you got something out of this analysis. You can follow me on X at Rothenberg Brian, or subscribe to this YouTube channel for more content as I put it out there. It is a brand new channel. I started today, so bear with me as I run through the kinks and everything, but I appreciate you watching this far. Have a great day wherever you are.